Nintendo, and certainly not the best I've heard from an RPG on the Super Nintendo either. But anyway, so now I'm now that the actual game has ended, what was I going to do? Normally, what do I do after every, oh yes. So now's the time where I do a little mini review about the game and like my thoughts on playing it. And since this was really short, I actually started this, FF4, 5, 4, and 6, that's for sure. Well, anyway, I can talk about that. I'm actually going to talk about that because now it is time for my little mini review of the game and how I felt after playing it. Now that I've beaten the game and completed every single side quest, I can mark it as complete on my own backlog. So, alright, let's get started. So, first of all, would I recommend this game? Of course I would. Actually, from a gameplay aspect, it's actually I was really impressed by how thoughtful they were. They basically made the game made it so that yes, you have to figure out how to get through places, but once you got progress, you never. Well, first of all, the penalty for dying isn't the worst you could get. You do lose a lot. You can lose all your gems, but you'll never lose progress, and that's really nice. So if I beat a certain number of layers and I die on the 10th layer, it's okay. I'll just get set back to the save point and I can save. And there's even items like the strange bottle that protects you from losing your gems when you die. And that's also really useful. The other thing I wanted to say is the really nice thing about the game is just it's just not losing progress, and you could eventually figure out how to get anywhere. And oftentimes, if you were missing something, for the most part, for the main quest stuff, it's pretty good. They were pretty good about getting you on the right place. And if you're how come I can't get certain things? Then you're oh, it's because I needed this ability that I have to go back into town, and then you were encouraged to talk to every NPC, but sometimes you would get something interesting from it. Of course, there are a few things where you're just talking, an NPC is just there for fun, or just something silly. You don't actually do anything with them. But for the most part, that's the other thing that the short end boss speeches. Yeah, no kidding. The end boss Deathtoll / Dark Gaia is pretty to the point. He basically says hey, life sucks, and he's in the way he embodies that feeling in the back of the mind of all the negativity in your life. And it's okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I felt about the story. The story is, well, actually the actual plot is very simple. It's okay, you're Blaze or Blazer, which is what he gets referred to as in the later games. And you save the world. You're saving the world because King Magrid, the idiot, this guy that he got so crazy that he thought that selling everyone, making a deal with Deathless and getting lots of money would make it happen. He got screwed, and he screwed everyone over. And of course, the king realizes that. Though unfortunately, the queen doesn't, but she's kind of killed. Dr. Leo kills her with him. So. Let's see. Plot's pretty simple, but the most important thing is just talking to all the NPCs. Because some of the NPCs don't have anything to say, but most of the NPCs actually have thought-provoking things, and you're made to think about certain aspects of life, and it makes you ponder first, and that's really nice. It's all about the little, as I mentioned throughout the playthrough, it's all about the little details or the little interactions with the NPCs, and that's probably the biggest takeaway I got from this game. Is that part where it's just fun to talk, hearing about the NPCs in their lives, and you learn a little more about them. A race that lives for a year, and they have to make the most of their extremely short lives. And I thought that was really interesting. It was an interesting world too. Of course, it's very small, and and I actually think the length of the game is probably just about right. it is a bit on the short side, and I almost want to say I could have probably had it, but in the end, like, no, I actually think the pacing of the game is a good change of pace. The thing is, like, I'm not one of those believers that everything needs to be 60 hours or more to be fulfilling, because, like, I think that where it's better to not wear out your welcome than to grate on the players, and all the player remembers is how long it took and how much filler it was. The challenge is actually, I think, is about right too, and there's plenty of ways to get around the challenge. And generally, like, they paced it well enough that if you do go after a lot of layers, you won't have a problem. I think even the final boss, which I died 3 or 4 times, that's pretty fair. Like, and the strategy to beat him isn't too bad. He's not pretty hard. He's not the toughest final boss I fought. Not compared to Pop Full Mail and Black games. I think Pop Full Mail is still harder than Soul Blazer after playing Soul Blazer. And so I'm actually surprised that Soul Blazer is not nearly as challenging as I thought it was going to be. But it's still really fun. It's still a lot of fun. So, as for the graphics, I've talked a little bit about the story, and now we're going to move to maybe the graphics and the art. I mean, it's for 1992. It's actually pretty good. I mean, keep in mind that this is like only a year after Super Nintendo, so a lot of the stuff that you'll see in later games is not present, and hasn't been developed yet, and this is like really soon. So like the fact that they were able to make the most out of the system at this time is pretty impressive. So the graphics are serviceable for the most part. I had no trouble seeing stuff, and like everything, like the font's very clear, and so I didn't have trouble reading anything. The number and like the HUD is fine. I don't think I had a problem. It's interesting that almost everything in this game has a life bar except the final boss. I guess I think that's an interesting deliberate choice. And I guess that's to make it so that you're like, oh my gosh, how much HP does this final boss have? But if you just keep at it, you'll beat him, right? And so the graphics are pretty good, and I can tell what things are doing. The controls are actually very good too. There are some weird like hitbox issues. Not hit issues, but it's kind of, sometimes it's just, you have to kind of get used to your actual range, and enemies can sometimes run into you and start hurting you really badly. But for the most part, the controls of the game are fine. And the other interesting thing I noticed is that for items, especially when it's interesting that you only have one healing item and you don't actually use it. It's more of a passive item, protect against you dying. And then of course you have the magic bell, which makes you God among men, and you can kill everything. So you get it very late, so it's basically useful only for the first boss fight, and for the second boss fight it's a little too risky because you won't have the defense. Anything else I want to say? Yes, so the music, the sound, like, it's serviceable. The effects are pretty good. And a lot of the music, there's like 1 or 2 pretty good tracks, but the rest is okay. Like, it's not the best thing I've heard. It's definitely not comparable to Square. Some of the Square games that I've played, like 4 and 6, like Steam Power Cat has mentioned. And I think I'll probably only really remember like the boss music, whatever. Yeah, for the most part, the music's serviceable. It's not grating and it doesn't make you want to pull your hair out. But you're not gonna remember. It's hardly memorable, and I'm probably not gonna remember them very well. And but hey, it's not bad. It's good enough for what it is. And finally, let's see. I mean, I guess this is the overall part. So overall, I'd say this is actually like, this makes me interested in like what the later entries in the Gaia series are like, because this game was actually pretty good, and it's a good length. It's not too long, and I would definitely recommend it. And like, it's kind of tough near the end, but I think it's a pretty fair challenge, and I'm actually pretty amazed that they tuned it so well that you don't feel that it's way out of your league. I think, and like, I'm really impressed, like how thoughtful they were for the most part just how the game is designed, and like it's definitely a classic. Totally, you should play it, and that way you'll be ready to play Illusion of God, which I hear is even better, and then Terranigma, which is supposed to blow both of those games out of the water. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for my review. So that's the end of that. So yeah, basically go on and play it, and it's in English, so you can play it. So you here in the West can play it. Unlike some of the other games, unlike Shenzhen, which you can't play without Chinese knowledge, this game you can play without knowledge of Japanese. So you can play it in English, keeping in mind that some of the English translations are a little on the iffy side, as I mentioned, but it's good enough. You can figure out what they're trying to say. And yeah, definitely get it. It's definitely recommended. I don't know if you can get a virtual console. You could probably get it on Super Nintendo. I'm actually playing this via a flash cart, and the flash cart works in the real Super Nintendo. So it's like I'm playing the real game. Basically, I am playing the real game. And so yeah, that ends my playthrough of Soul Blazer. It was a very. This is a week. It was 2 weeks. I was playing this game for about 2 weeks, and I managed to beat it tonight, or this morning, for the rest of the world, or the afternoon if you're watching from Asia, or that time. So yeah, that brings me to let's talk about the